Welcome to the Salem Chamber podcast. I'm Tom Hoffert, CEO of the Salem Chamber, and we're pleased to have you listening. Let's jump right in. Well, welcome Salem Chamber podcast listeners. Very excited today to welcome Dr. John Mark Yeats, President of Corban University, to the Salem Chamber's podcast. Dr. Yeats, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It is so good to be here, and please feel free to call me John Mark.
Well, John Mark, it has been, you're almost up on your 8th month at Corban University. The announcement was March 14th. Congratulations to you.
Yep, thank you.
And a hearty welcome to our community.
Yeah.
I'm very close to it, but Salem is a dear, special place. And how has that transition worked for you? Has it been refreshing to come to this community? Exciting? Scary?
It's been fantastic. We moved here from Kansas City, Missouri, and it is a very different cultural moment. But I think this is one of the coolest stories of all, if you'll divulge for just a second. When I found out about the position, I was getting ready to apply. And of course, one of the things that you ought to do if you're married is kind of ask your spouse before you talk about the potential of moving your family halfway across the United States. So I asked my wife, hey, there's this school. It's in Oregon. What do you think? And my wife's response was, have you forgotten? Again, those of you who are married, that's a very bad response. And that means I must have missed something very important. And then she fills me in and reminds me, she said, Salem is where my mom was born and raised. I will go tomorrow. Let's go. And that was like a massive shift and a way to really catapult towards this direction. So in many respects, I joke, it's like, I think Salem is in my wife's blood and she has loved it. My kids, all 4 of my adult kids moved out with us and they're having fun out here. And we have just enjoyed every single bit of it. Now, of course, we came at the right time, right? Summer, we get to enjoy all of the beauty. And so now we're hitting the gray season, but we're looking forward to all of it.
Well, it's wonderful to have you here. If you don't mind, could we get to know, our Salem business community, we really embrace education.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people don't understand the deep connection between education and a healthy economic ecosystem.
Yeah.
Without talent coming in to the ecosystem, there is no producers. There is no ability to grow your business and see things. So education is very dear to this organization.
Right.
As you look back, could you provide our listeners a little bit of history? How did John Mark grow up? Tell me about where you were, things that maybe you experienced that you were unique, a little bit about your childhood.
Yeah, so I grew up in the Midwest. My dad was an entrepreneurial church planter, so we got to experience a lot of different things of how to live in a scrappy and resourceful way to make sure that we do that. So because church planting isn't exactly lucrative and we didn't make enough to make ends meet, we flipped houses. And so I grew up learning to work with my hands and to be able to do things that were probably outside of what some people get a chance to grow up doing. So I enjoyed learning all of those things. Maybe I should correct that. I didn't like it at the time. I really enjoy it now. When you're 16, it's not always fun to pull wire in a house that you're refinishing. But that was a great way to learn about the hard work that it takes to make anything work. And I grew up in a family that valued work, that the things that we do matter. And it doesn't matter what that is specifically, it's the fact that you're engaged fully. And that was one of the things I learned from both my grandfather and my father, that it's time to jump in and to find your niche and to go and pursue and to make a difference, not just for your own family, but also for the community. And how do you have a deep-seated engagement with your community? So I was always appreciative of that. Went off to university, as many people do, and you learn a lot of different things along the way. And I was very thankful to have the opportunity to study internationally as well. So not only did I study in the United States, but I studied at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. I did a master's at Oxford, came back to the States and did a master's divinity degree in Louisville, and eventually ended up doing my PhD in Chicago. So a broad spectrum of geographic ideas. But some of those things that you're able to experience with that gives you greater contours and greater ability to look at different aspects that of life that maybe sometimes we don't always understand. So, for example, when I had just graduated from high school, I had the privilege of going and working with a gentleman in Eastern Europe It was 1991, and if we remember back into our history, wasn't long before that the wall had fallen. And we're in what was then known as Yugoslavia, and we're working in some of the cities, and we're doing some aid work and some other kinds of things. And I remember being able to, the guy I was working with came back, he's really excited. He's like, we can go into Albania. We can go into Albania. Albania had just attained freedom 2 weeks before. We were the first Americans to drive in. So as a young man, I'm driving into this environment, and I am looking at an economy that has absolutely collapsed. Everything around is impoverished. People have no idea where they're getting their food. They have no idea how things are going to work. Everything that they had valued in terms of monetary possessions, it's all collapsed out from underneath them. And yet they had risen up as a people to free themselves from a communist regime that had literally been abusing every aspect of their work, of their selves, of everything. So I'm experiencing what this is like. And then over the course of the summer, we're moving perpetually towards the north. And we end our time all the way up in Poland, where they had their freedom from Russia a couple of years prior to that, and seeing the establishment of economic stability and the ability to have free exchange of markets, to be able to see that and to see how in just a short time period of 2-3 years, how rapidly that environment had changed. Sure, there were still difficulties. Yes, they were still trying to get their hands around all of that, but things had so radically shifted for them towards the better. We were talking with individuals, and they were talking about how horrible things were before, how rough it was in the transition, but how much hope they had now. It really stuck with me that it's in the process of conducting ourselves in business, in the work in our communities, in seeing free exchange of ideas and seeing the free exchange of commodities, and in all of those things, that it actually is a provider of hope. And that's where we want to see things happen in our communities. And ultimately, as I move towards university leadership and other kinds of things, that's what I want to see in our students, is this sense of hope. Not only that they can leave the institution well trained, but they go into communities as purveyors of hope. Hope for the future, hope for what can happen when you work as a change agent in your culture. And one of the things that we talk about really is our motto as an institution is we are educating Christians who will make a difference in the world for Jesus Christ. So our students are Christians, but they're going out really to make a difference. How do you make a difference? So we are always talking with our students about, what are we doing to make a difference? How does this make a difference today? How does this make a difference tomorrow? How does this make a difference 50 years from now? How can we be those change agents in a culture?
There's a very big difference between traveling recreationally, internationally, and traveling like you did. Was that an intentional act? Did you know the trajectory you wanted to be on for a career, or was this a special calling or a special connection that brought you to that moment?
I'm a weirdo in the sense I was an uber nerd. I knew I wanted to be a professor even in high school. In high school, I subscribed to Biblical Archaeology Review, not any other magazine, not Sports Illustrated, not something else that all of my peers were reading. I was reading nerdy stuff. I just am wired weird, and embraced that early on and just kept pursuing that trajectory.
As you looked at yourself and were pursuing that as a career, who are the people around you that encouraged you to say, John Mark, you can become this? You're a man of faith, but we're putting faith in you to help you get to this place. Who are those individuals?
That's always a great question, right? Because who are our mentors? I love to start with family, because I think family has one of the best opportunities to be that hope giver and that change maker in the lives of someone. Definitely my parents invested heavily in making sure that was a reality. My parents were always ones who were encouraging to pursue the highest level of everything that you can get. You not forcing, but encouraging. You can do these things. You can make this. One of the greatest encouragers as well was my grandfather. My grandfather, who never attained an education more than 8th grade. He was one of the ones who was like, you can do this. You can make this happen. And all along the way, I picked up mentors. I really firmly believe in the mentoring process. and made sure that along the way, every step, undergraduate, graduate, first jobs, there's always someone I'm trying to look at, to learn from, and to glean from. And there are so many people in my past who have poured into me and actually helped me think through. We could spend the whole podcast just talking about those people, but in many respects, I see that as a gift from God in the way that I've participated within community, that the Lord has given people to me to think about how, and to think about the why, and to think about what is the next step of development, and to think about all of these aspects, but then not only to think through it, but then to say, now go, do it. Don't just sit on the sideline. You can do it. Go attain that.
You talk about knowing where you wanted to be, maybe not the path to get there.
Right.
None of us get that leisure. When you decided to be a professor and really invest in your education, talk to me about, you were in an area of incredible conflict at a time, the 2,000 years of conflict, many more probably. What was that like, being in Jerusalem and being educated out of the country in the middle of a very challenging geopolitical dynamic each and every day? Tell us a little bit about that.
That was amazing. I actually lived in Israel during the Oslo, in air quotes, peace accords. There was very little peace and a lot of mess. The bus line that I rode on every day was blown up multiple times. That changes your perspective. It helps you do a couple of things. One, it helps you live with an urgency, because it helps you understand every day could be your last. And that's something that we all need to understand. Every day, every moment could be our last. So we live to the fullest what we have. It also helped me understand that a lot of the narratives that we are often given are much more complex. We love clean stories that have a certain beginning, a difficulty, and then a happy ending. When you're living in a geopolitical context that has really deep roots and complex geographical factors, there is no easy way forward. And what ends up happening is the people who are working towards this bring to the table a lot of different philosophies and a lot of different ideas. And some of them sound good at the time, but it's always in the fruit. And it is a complex, very difficult thing to be able to work through. Even as we're looking at, as a point of our recording, we're looking at continued conflict in the Middle East. And it's interesting. I had taken a group, years later, I used to take people over to study internationally over periods of time. And I was at a group, but I was in Israel, and I'm up in the northern border of Israel. I was with a friend of mine who's an incredible guide, and he picked up a rock and he chucked it off to the left from where we were standing. And he goes, "Okay, we see where that rock landed?" We're like, yeah. He's like, "That's Lebanon." And he's not throwing a rock very far. It's just right there. That's Lebanon. And you see that village right there? That's where the rockets come from. And then he picks up another rock and he chucks it and he goes, "That's Syria." And that rock to the right was not very far either. And he goes, "We're going to go climb this mountain over here in a second, and we can see into Damascus." And so now we're talking about, okay, this is very different when we think about how close all of this is and why all of this matters when we're talking about peace and freedom, and why this is more complex and all of these pieces. So we learned that, I think that was a very important lesson, was just learning that there are no easy answers. It all comes from work. One of the things I also learned in the midst of that is that disagreement, while it's not always pleasant, sometimes disagreement and vigorous conversation can be fantastic for moving forward. One of the things I loved in Israeli culture at the time was as you walk through the streets, you would see all of these guys in cafes, and we're here at a table and we're having a conversation. They would be having vigorous conversation, disagreeing about this, and they were loud and they were everything. But at the end of the day, they would get up, pay their tab, and walk away arm in arm. There's a difference in having disagreement, but still knowing that we are working towards the same end, and still seeing that even though I disagree with you, we're still working for the good of what's here, versus kind of what we're experiencing in the 21st century, where we've taken disagreement and we've created silos to where there is no understanding that ultimately we still have to work together for this. And this is where ultimately we're going to find that there is hopefully at least a stalemate or a peace that can generate a little bit, is by having the difficulty and the conflict and the issues, but then walking away still arm in arm, saying we are still brothers and sisters who live in the same community, and this is all for what we want to see for the good, so that families can grow, so that we can have just a life.
That's a complex, and I can't even imagine that experiences you've gone through. Did your time at Oxford predicate this, or was that?
It was after.
Okay.
So Oxford was later. It was my first graduate degree, and that was an entirely different, also incredible circumstance and environment to be in, where you have freedom to pursue, freedom to inquire, freedom to explore. One of the largest libraries of the world, the Bodleian Library, and just being able to walk in and basically get any book that you need or want, and from almost any era of when books were published, and be able to attend lectures from some of the top minds literally in the world. And you can go to any lecture. You have a class that you're accountable for, but you can literally go to any lecture and listen and learn and grow. And all knowledge is at your fingertips. It's an unreal, incredible place. It's magical.
I'm going to be vulnerable and share some naivety. When you decide you want to be a professor in theology, Christianity, is there a simple roadmap, or
No.
does this wind and head different places for many different people?
Yeah, originally when I was in high school, I was like, I'm going to be a professor. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be an archaeologist, right? We'd all watched Indiana Jones. We'd done these other things. This is going to be great. That was one of the reasons why I ended up at Hebrew University in Jerusalem. I was like, I'm going to be an archaeologist. This is going to be great. I'm going to learn. And then I went on a dig. And if you've ever been on an archaeological dig, it's a dirty place to be. And I ended up in dirt in places I didn't even know I had places. And I was like, I'm out. It's not for me at all. This is terrible. I want something else. But by that point, I'd really fallen in love with history. And I focused my time on Jewish history. I actually did my studies at Oxford on Jewish history as well. And that became my trajectory, was history. You just kind of fell that direction, and it kind of winnowed itself out. And then as I went and pursued my PhD, it actually was in history. I wrote on how Christians and Jews had talked about the nature of conversion and what that meant, and the complexity that relates in that as it was happening in the late 18th and early 19th century. So this is another complex story, and how does this work out and play out? But your dissertation and the research to do on that is very, very focused in a very little narrow thing. I found an organization that nobody had written on at Oxford, is where their archive was, and I just spent forever digging through all of their dirt. So that's what I did. It was a different kind of dirt, not quite like the archaeologist, but yeah, lots of documents.
As an academic and a believer, talk to me about how from Missouri,
Yeah,
to Salem, and you mentioned, that your wife's family was born here.
yeah.
But why Corban? Why Corban? It can't be
Why
that
Corban?
simple.
Why Corban? It can't be that simple, right? Actually, one of the things that happens as you kind of move this career trajectory for me is you want to find a place that's a match. Unlike a lot of entrepreneurs where you get a chance to start something from scratch, in the academic universe, you don't really usually get to start things from scratch. Institutions were usually birthed 50 years ago, 70 years ago, 100 plus years ago. And so we're joining their story. So when you're doing interviews and you're looking at places to be, you want a place that has a compelling story that you resonate with. And Corban, although in the Midwest, I wasn't as familiar with Corban. It was actually my assistant who put me on to Corban. I love it when you have assistants who are like, yeah, this is where you ought to go. He's from the Pacific Northwest, and he had gone to Multnomah. His sister had gone to Corban. He goes, this is a perfect place for you. This is a great match. And so as I started digging around and figuring this out, what I discovered was an institution that was very clear about its mission, right? So that's a great indicator. We want to be mission driven. It's a institution that was very much connected to the community, at least from what I could see on the outside. And then once I got on the inside, very much confirmed that. And then it was an institution that understood the work of the institution as throughput. Sometimes institutions can become very much self-focused. So it's all about the good that you can do for people at that moment, instead of how you create an environment that enables others to be sent out. And Corban has had a long-standing history of not only producing quality graduates, but sending them out with their own sense of personal mission so that they can make a difference. When you start putting all of those pieces together, you start saying, okay, this is a different kind of story. This is a different kind of place. And that's the kind of place that I would love to be if they'll have me. And then there's always that risk, right? So you apply and you're amidst a huge crowd of however many that are applying, and you've got to, hopefully you're selected, and you kind of walk through that process. But
as you have looked, you have a very solid worldview, clearly. Before we drill down on Corban itself, what is your view of Christian education nationally right now?
Yeah, Christian education is in a very unique space. First of all, there's just be as generic as possible. Anything kind of labeled Christian, there's always been a place for it. And I would argue there always will be a place for it. Not only are Christians, those who at least claim that name, a significant portion of the population, but Christianity has its own understanding of the world and how things are supposed to be understood and put together. Because of that, there's always an opportunity for us to be able to connect faith and learning. So the great scholastic understanding in the medieval period was that the best way to understand faith is its faith seeking understanding. If you come at your education from an understanding that through faith, I actually have no fear of seeking all truth, and I can pursue and I can jump in and I can dive in and explore every area of the universe and never have a worry of that truth will ever contradict or move beyond where I am. That's a different place of learning. And so this faith-seeking understanding actually historically has made for a really great combo. And that's what most of our Christian education structures look like in the main, if we're just about as generic as you possibly can. When you start to write that down, small college markets, now I'm going to step outside of Christian for a second, small college markets in and of themselves, any school that runs less than 2,000 students, whether they're a state school, a private school that's not religious, or a private religious-oriented school, we're experiencing one of the roughest markets that we have ever experienced, hands down. Depending on who you read or who you talk to, some are expecting a closure rate of these schools around 15 to 20% before the year 2030. That's like buckle up, you better mind all your P's and Q's and all those other things. And some of that is just cultural. We have a lot of suspicion about the value of education in the broader culture right now. That's just part of the narrative that we're facing in the United States. Part of it is because there are schools who've taken advantage of students and families and continue to escalate the cost of education far beyond what the return on an investment, at least initially, looks like. Well, then that's a horrible value, and we shouldn't be engaged within that. Now, when you start bringing that back over to the Christian side and just getting more narrow, our institution, Corban, as well as many other evangelical institutions, right? So now that's a subset of Christianity. And by evangelical, I don't mean a political party. I mean what that's meant classically, which is just people who believe that Jesus saves, people that believe that there's an obligation and responsibility for us to tell others about Christ. It means that we're those who uphold the truth of the Bible, those kinds of things. When you start moving towards that particular group, there's more pressure because culturally there are other ideas and concepts that you're always having to face, and some of those fall into fashion and out of fashion, and you have to kind of work with those. But you're also experiencing a shift where, with the continued rupturing of our political spectrum, politics are becoming more and more the dominant view that defines identity over and against even denominational or other identifiers that prior generations held on to. So while we can make a claim that, hey, we're an evangelical institution, whatever, the next question oftentimes now is, but where do you fall on the political spectrum? That's a rough question to ask, because that's not actually the place where I want to land. We're going to have people who have different political perspectives. We just are. So that's not the place where I want the conversation to land, but that's where we're seeing a winnowing of sorts happen amongst our schools. So it makes it a little bit more challenging, but with every challenge, there's opportunity. And so we keep looking for those unique opportunities and places where you can continue to press forward. So for many of our Christian schools and Christian colleges, the opportunity that many of us have is to be able to serve the broader Christian community, to create an opportunity for students to learn and to grow in their personal foundation while building a strong foundation as well for their career, which then enables them to be more stable, enables them to have greater roots and deeper connectivity, which then provides them the opportunity to be better employees and to work within a context where people can get moved around a lot, and they have a little bit more stability, I think, because it's like those big buoys that you see out in the lake or sometimes in the ocean, and there's a lot more going on. There's waiting. They can kind of move with the waves that are coming. They're not going anywhere because they're still got that weight down on the bottom, and it helps hold them and ground them and keep them there.
You look at that would be first of all a very scary statistic, and I wouldn't say that was too different than chambers of commerce.
There you go. Okay.
Relevancy, the need for relevancy has never been more paramount for chambers of commerce. In fact, what does a chamber of commerce even mean? Yeah. A bunch of businesses come into a big room that's a chamber. It's a hard industry to describe, and I'm sure selling a college and selling a university experience is part of how you have to define the relevancy to future students. Talk to me about the difference that a Corban University student experiences as a student in student life and going to classes versus a student who has selected a traditional public university.
Absolutely. So in many respects, you're still going to get really good outcomes, right? From either side, right? You got a student, they're willing to apply themselves and they're willing to jump in. If it's biomedical science or mathematics or education, you're going to get kind of the same outcomes because we compete in a similar market all the way across. A Corban experience is very different from this fact that as a uniquely and clearly articulated Christian institution, we're going to make sure that everything that you experience also is being read through a Christian lens or read through a Christian worldview. So what does that look like? Well, on a practical level, if I'm studying to be a CPA and I am dealing with math and figures and revenue and credits and debits and all those things, what difference does that make? Well, it makes a big difference because where we're going to start pressing on things are how do things apply within your business from an ethical and moral standpoint? What does it mean to work with integrity? What does it mean to work with honesty? What does it mean that you care that, and you're actually helping your client care for the people that work for them? And you're helping them see their financial picture as more than just benefiting the stakeholder, but you're also benefiting everybody else who's working with there. How can you begin to deal with this relating to that type of level? When we start talking about biomedical things, whether it's nursing or labs or other kinds of things, how do we tell the truth about our research so that even the things that didn't quite come out the way that we wanted to allow us the means by which we can move to the next aspect? Or what is it that we do so that it has the best outcome for people? How do we maximize so that we can continue to benefit others? And that becomes the driving force. It's the ethics, it's the others focused, it's the aspect where we're looking at concepts that we actually do believe truth exists. And so we're going to wrestle with those concepts and to make sure that we're talking about those in the classroom and wrestling with them. And some of them are not easy answers, and some of them we're going to disagree with, but it's still things that we're bringing up in our classes so that our students are wrestling with that. On top of that, our student life is a little different. Every student gets the opportunity to go to chapel. We do chapels 3 times a week. And during those chapels, we have business leaders, we have political leaders, we have thought leaders, we have pastors, we have others, and we have conversations within the context of chapel where we think through ideas. And sometimes it's more of what you might experience like at a church service where somebody is actually preaching or expositing a text. Sometimes it's a conversation about how someone applies their faith to business or to the medical field or to the sciences or however we can do those things. So we're trying to help provide a holistic framing and an environment for students. And then on top of that, our students have a ton of fun. There's all kinds of things. We just finished the Lumberjack Games, which is a fall tradition at Corban, where they have 2 days of competitions over, I guess, lumberjacking. I don't know how else to say that. How fast you can cut the log and how far you can throw an axe and all those kinds of things. We have all the normal things that college students do in terms of fun and other aspects. And we have fantastic sports. Our teams are perpetually NAIA D1 achievers that are in major competition and are usually making playoffs and championships. And it's just fun. Yesterday, I was at a basketball game. 2 days prior to that, I was at playoff volleyball games. And tonight, I'll probably be on the sidelines of a playoff for our women who are competing for a championship slot in soccer. So we get to enjoy all of that, and that's fantastic.
Tell our listeners what they should know about Corban, but then I'd like to follow up on what do we not know about Corban that we should?
That you should. Okay, excellent. What you should know, especially if I'm thinking of the audience here with the chamber, right? You should know that our students are being prepared to work now. They're being prepared to make a difference the moment they walk across that platform. Some of you already know that as you're listening because you've had them as interns in your business or at your hospital or wherever. You know that. You know that they're ready. But that's what we really want to communicate is that they are ready. Our employment rates for our students are fantastic compared to other institutions our size. So I love that. What people probably don't know is what would I say some of the things I was surprised about even when I got there. I think one of the things I was just so surprised about and pleased to discover was the joyfulness on our campus. That's not always the case at a campus to be able to categorize something that way, but students are generally joyful. There's kind of a happy atmosphere, which I really enjoy that's there. I think sometimes too that I wonder if people in the community know that on the southeast side of Salem, there's this beautiful campus that has unbelievable nature and has unbelievable just beauty that is contained on our campus. And we'd invite you to come check it out. I just did a walk with a faculty member that we've cut some trails into some things and looking at some of our forests. We have a couple of clusters of forest that is unlike any other place in Oregon. And we've got massive trees and it's just beautiful beyond description. It's unbelievable.
On your quest for relevancy for those that you serve, those who would be attracted to come and educate themselves and invest in Corban, what are you most excited about? What's coming up or any key initiatives you'd like to share with us?
So one that we are working about, and it is not officially launched, maybe by the time this actually goes live, is actually we used to do pre-nursing, and now it would be a full bachelor's of nursing. We're really excited about having that up because it's a way to serve our community and to serve our environment. And we are really looking forward to that. We have been developing as well. Here we are in the Willamette Valley. We started 2 years ago our agricultural science program that is putting students at the intersection of agribusiness and agronomy, and is really working with our students to hopefully serve the broader Salem and really United States by farming and agricultural work and ranching and how we produce food that makes a difference on the plates of every single person every single day. I love that. It was an initiative that took place before I got there, but we're doubling down and we're putting more emphasis on that and seeing that take place as we're seeing the number of people who are in agriculture actually decreasing, not because there is lack of need. There's more need for people to move that direction, but we want to equip the best and the leaders of that to make sure that we're driving forward into the future there.
That's a great trajectory and one that will be helpful statewide.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Tell us why Corban University will continue to make an impact on Salem's workforce.
Man, one of the things I love that I get to spend time with, and it's just incredible, are our faculty. We have top-notch faculty. I mean, this may be something that some of you do know, depending on your area, but some of you may not know, and this would kind of fall into that same category of your prior question. We have some of the top faculty who are doing incredible things and motivating students and in helping them understand the value of work and the value of contributing to community and the value of serving a broader market. This year, in 2023, the teacher of the year for Oregon was a Corban grad, not from 20 years ago, 5 years ago. That's how much the student is making a difference. Our graduate is making a difference now. We have our alumni throughout the business community. We have our alumni throughout the education community. We have our alumni throughout some of the sciences and other places in town where we are serving in a way that it is making a difference. And we are continuing that tradition. But I'm telling you, it's driven by our faculty who live in this area, who love this city, who love this community, and want to serve this community. When you get faculty who are excited about that, that means the students catch it. And when the students catch it, that means it begins to roll right through our community in a very positive way. And we have so many alumni who stick around right here in the Willamette Valley, and it is amazing. Love it.
Well, we are experiencing it firsthand at this organization. Yeah. Alan Rasmussen is a graduate of your accounting and business management side. And another gentleman that you may or may not know, Ryan Dempster, serves on our board of directors, and I know he's on your board of trustees. Talk to me, Dr. Yeats, about the role that your board of trustees plays in your life.
Yeah.
And how you work with that board to accomplish your missional goals.
And my trustees are my bosses, and that's always a fun environment. How many bosses do you have? I have 16. So there you go. We get a chance to engage with them. I talk to my trustees regularly because my trustees are those who are coming from a wide spectrum of fields, a wide spectrum of backgrounds, and quite honestly, they're incredibly wise, and I love to hear from them. And I love to come to them with an issue or a challenge, or to say, hey, this is what we're facing. And they'll get to work at wrestling with ideas or solutions that come from their fields. And then we begin to apply those in effective ways. One of the things I think is a great example of this actually is kind of our push towards agricultural science. That actually was a trustee-driven initiative under the prior leadership at Corban University. That trustees said, hey, there's a market that you guys don't even know is there. Well, sure enough, it is. And let's go and let's pursue that. So we have this wonderful relationship with them. They seek to help us stay grounded. They seek to help us stay focused. They seek to help us stay on mission. to make sure that we are focused on the things that we're supposed to. So usually every couple weeks, I'm meeting with some of my board executive leaders and talking with them. Our full board of trustees usually meets 3 times a year, but it's fantastic to get their insight and then to be able to apply that. I love that relationship that we have in the nonprofit world that really is a symbiotic relationship. We can't do what we do without trustees. And we hope that at the same time, we're offering value to even our trustees in the sense that they have this relationship that they're contributing to the future by investing their time, energy, and resources into an organization like ours.
As I was looking deeper into Corban, as you would imagine, you're going to have a very influential and smart community leader coming on to share a conversation. I was blown away by how few of your trustees actually reside in Oregon. I mean, not as a negative, they are everywhere.
Yeah.
So the perspectives that they're bringing to you and when you gather as a board, I bet is very unique.
It is. And honestly, that's very helpful for a university. We need to be focused on our community here. Absolutely. But the day that we forget that we're part of a larger state and a larger country and a larger world is the day that we make a huge misstep. So we want to make sure that we're serving as broadly as we possibly can. So like my board chair lives in Arizona, my vice in Oklahoma, and we've got California and Washington and Oregon. It's all represented there. And I love that. And it gives us a better opportunity of thinking through big picture issues, which is what a board is supposed to do, right? Big picture. The day-to-day granular things should be on myself and my vice presidents as we're kind of wrestling with things and then having to deal with those on the ground. But man, we get these big picture things. So fantastic. I love what they bring to the table.
If our listeners are curious how to find out more about Corban University, how would they do that?
Number one way is the web, of course, Corban, Corban.edu. By the way, Corban, we used to be Western Baptist, if you've been around here for a long, long time. The name was changed because oftentimes there's some confusion over what Baptist is and those other kinds of things. But Corban is a term that's actually derived from the Old Testament, and it means dedicated. That's simply all that it means. It's a Hebrew word that means dedicated. And so the idea is that we're dedicated to the task. We're dedicated to training students. We're dedicated to our community. We're dedicated to serve. And that carries through in so much of the things that we do. And I love that. I love being able to have a conversation about being dedicated. So people can go and find us at Corban.edu, Corban.edu. That is a great place. And as well as with social media. So if you want more news related things, you can join different groups in Facebook and find those. If you want more, what kind of hijinks are our students up to, Instagram is the other place to do that on a regular basis. You can kind of get to the tale of two cities, but it's a lot of fun there.
John, Mark, a lot of the guests that we feature are longtime Salem people.
Yeah.
And so I often put a challenge out to them from your purview, what we should be doing to make our community better.
Yeah.
Given you've been here 8 months, coming up on 8 months, I'm going to let you off the hook a little on that one, but I would ask you to share a little bit of your tactical knowledge on how can people make their communities better?
Yeah, that is always the perennial question. It doesn't matter how great a city is or how rough a city is. That's what we want to be asking. How do we make a city better? And ultimately that happens when we understand our role as business owners, as not-for-profits, as individuals, of seeing the bigger whole and finding ways that we can serve. We all know that there are issues within our community, and the longer we're in one, the more that we begin to feel those in a very real way. And it becomes more tactile, I think is a good word to use for that. We can begin to feel the places where things are going well and they're smooth, and we can feel the places where there's more friction or maybe even a few splinters. And so we want to be able to address those in the best way that we can. Ultimately, that comes through cooperation with others. Ultimately, that comes as we work together as a community. Here in Salem, we're sitting in a wonderful place full of incredibly gorgeous surroundings, right? We're just so blessed beyond anything. It just every night it seems like I'm taking pictures of sunsets and just marveling in the glory here in this fall with the colors that are changing. It's just gorgeous. And we send those back to people in the Midwest and just brag a little bit. It's fascinating. It's fun. It's a good thing to do. When we look though at our community, it's very clear that even in a short amount of time, there's things that we probably should continue to work on, right? We've got issues where we want to be able to serve those who've become unhoused, that we want to make sure that there's safety within our context and our city, that it's safe for everybody. We want to figure out how we can best promote education of younger students through the Salem Kaiser School District, and knowing how we can be effectively engaged with that, because there's some significant challenges in that age group education framework. And we have a lot to do in our city to keep pressing towards excellence, which our educators already do, and then figuring out how we can make up funding shortfalls and other pieces. And again, as a community, how do we engage in that so that we're all making it a win for our entire city? Because the better that is doing, the better off we all do, as it helps us bring people into the city and helps them stay. So that safety, the education, all those pieces we want to continue to promote.
You've heard some incredible perspectives from Dr. John Mark Yeats. We welcome you to this community. The Salem Chamber is very proud to be a partner with Corban Universities and honestly with all of our university systems and education in our Salem Kaiser area, because it is the foundation for future growth.
It is.
And we're extremely happy that you chose Salem. We don't know what took so long, Dr. Yates. But
that's what I was asking the other day.
We're absolutely thrilled to have you here. For more information, corban.edu, and look forward to continuing to watch you inspire people around you. And thank you for your commitment to Salem.
Thanks for having us, Tom.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Salem Chamber podcast. The Salem Chamber is a 501c6 not-for-profit organization representing nearly 1,100 businesses in the greater Salem area. For additional information, please visit salemchamber.org. This has been a production of Dan Johnson and Lena Prine on the Salem Chamber's professional staff team.